Welcome to Requity Insights, a channel dedicated to documenting our journey to 100 world-class communities.
Welcome back to another episode of Requity Insights. My name is Velez and I'm joined by my co-host Dylan Marma. Today's video is going to cover RV Outdoor Hospitality Conference and Expo 2022, which was hosted November 7th through 10th in sunny Orlando, Florida. In this video, we're going to talk about what is the Outdoor Hospitality Conference and Expo, who is RV and what services they provide their members, our experience at this year's event, main takeaways, and most importantly, did we find value in this event? With that said, let's begin. I know that this was both of our first year attending the event. Prior to attending, did you have any preconceived notions or any expectations?
I can't say I had any preconceived notions really too much. If anything, I was just excited about the event itself. I was excited because for us, we've been operating in our own silo for a bit, right, within the industry. And aside from the mom and pop owners that we've worked with on different transactions and deals, we haven't had as much of an opportunity to meet and actually spend time in person with a lot of the sales brokers and other operators and even the vendors throughout the industry. So for us, it was a really awesome experience. It was just really great to be able to build upon those relationships first and foremost, and then second, to get exposed to a lot of unique ideas and concepts that are going into the industry and just get a general kind of pulse on the market itself.
I feel like the event really gave me the feeling that it was a much smaller, tight-knit community than what you would think. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, it definitely was. If anything, it really went to show that there's so many campground owners that are single park owners. We felt like we were in the minority of the ownership groups out there that had multiple campgrounds, which is different than a lot of other industry events that I've been to, having been to the NMHCs and the multifamily or even the mobile home conferences more recently. A lot of them are ran by larger operators that own many different communities. So if anything, I think that was a cool aspect to it because you see so many individual owners that have so much pride in what they do, and they're so hands-on within their ownership, and they all have unique ideas and thought processes to bring to the table. And for us, it just really goes to show that there's so much opportunity for innovation and expansion within the industry that gets me excited.
How did the Requity group specifically get involved with RV?
So RV is something that is pretty well known throughout the industry. It's a group that specifically focuses on working with owners and helping improve the RV ownership, RV campground ownership experience. Yeah. So we initially heard of them through purchasing campgrounds that actually had already been members of the RV group, and we've just seen it on many campgrounds at this point that we've been in communication with or been observing, that are in our local markets. So we said, well, definitely want to make sure we have a chance to plug in with this community because we're all about networking with other owners, and we have an abundance mindset on how can we all win and help each other improve in what we do.
You said that most of the campgrounds or some of the campgrounds already had an RV membership. Is it like a yearly membership that people purchase? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's usually an annual membership that you pay for as either an owner or you have the property entity itself pay for, and it helps you with marketing, branding. I think it gives guests a sense of these people are investing into they're being the best owners that they can, and they're usually a lot of times familiar with the industry as a whole. So a lot of times people will put it on their website and things like that. But yeah, it's usually on an annual. And then there's also a lot of more state-specific areas. So for us, being a lot of our portfolios in the Carolinas, we are also a member of CARVC, which is the Carolina Association.
Dylan, do you think you can tell us a little bit more about this year's event?
Sure thing. So in terms of this year's event, I'd say there's quite a bit that I can touch on here. The event itself took place in Orlando, Florida from November 7th to 10th. Despite the uncertainty that was caused from Hurricane Nicole, there was still over 1,100 guests in attendance, so it was a really solid turnout.
Yeah.
The conference in Expo consisted of numerous breakout sessions, such as industry topics such as hiring and retaining staff, park operations, the power of positioning and market economic outlook, and even fun-themed industry networking events. So a lot of cool stuff, a lot of great tech companies as well, seeing all the innovation going on in the industry. We heard a lot of good feedback on the Monday event, which was at Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville over in Auburndale. They actually went and toured campground itself, and then we also heard a lot of good things about the 80s party that was sponsored by New Book.
Okay, so they definitely try to do a good job of mixing business and pleasure, making it a fun time for all the attendees.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it was great.
Dylan, speaking on the educational sessions, I know that one of the main educational sessions that stuck out to us was a general hospitality industry economic outlook that we attended. Do you have any key takeaways from that session?
Yeah, so the session itself was ran by Bob Kaplan with NAI Group. I thought that was a really, really well done, and it summarized a lot of the themes that we heard throughout the entire event itself.
Yeah.
So some of these might be broader stroke themes that we heard throughout the event, and some of others are specifics towards what we heard in the session itself.
Yeah.
But I'll just take a minute I got a couple of footnotes here that I'll cover with you guys that I think are great sort of headlines to give everyone a general sense on our pulse on the industry, and a lot of which has been confirmed or expanded upon. So number one is right now, of course, there's a lot of discretionary savings out there that have accumulated over the last 2 years. So I think there's both a pent-up demand from people that have been cooped up in their house during COVID that are now ready to double down on traveling extra.
Absolutely.
Right now. You also saw savings rates go from somewhere in the 5 to 10% range to 24, 25 to 37% throughout COVID. So that means that there's a lot of people that, one, want to travel more, and two, have the savings to travel more.
Yeah, there's money to travel.
And that's been a huge spike in ongoing demand for camping right now. And we're still seeing that play out. We have not seen that slow down yet. I believe it is slowing down, I'm sure, in certain markets, in certain parts of the country, but we're still seeing continued growth in demand as tailwinds that are coming off of COVID. Now, some of the headwinds that are up against us right now being that gas prices are rising, and there's more volatility there. We're also seeing on the operating expense side for campgrounds, the utilities and payroll are the two big items that are going up quite a bit. I think they're well above most people had projected for this year in terms of the income increase. Payroll not being specific to the campground industry, right? Payroll in general has been going up substantially in the last few years with the inflation that's taken place. Of course, going into different economic environment, there's likely to be some level of slowdown on that. But of course, that has had a big impact because campgrounds are pretty payroll intensive, right? They're big people business, and we always try to be competitive by treating our people well and staying competitive on our labor rates. So we've experienced that firsthand. Then when it comes to the utilities, again, I'm not an expert in terms of the nuances of what's driving it, but we have seen in certain parts of the country as much as 20% jumps on electric, and also seeing huge jumps on the water and sewer bills that are going up, and the rates that are being charged for utilities. So those are the two items that were reinforced that people are having issues with. We've also seen that in the ELS quarterly reports. There was emphasis that those are the two areas that they saw the most year-over-year growth on the expense side. And then there's the question of, from a headwind standpoint, are campgrounds going to continue to have this demand? What happens when everyone, of course, savings are normalized now again, right? So what happens when everyone blows all the money that they saved up during COVID, or they get it out of their system? I always like to start with the risk and evaluating the downside, and then talking towards what we're seeing in terms of continued headwinds that are going up against us. You're seeing a shift in terms of the target demographic of most campgrounds. Right now, millennials are really leading the way. Millennials that have children are the number one age group that are actively camping right now.
Surprising.
And then on an income level, campgrounds used to be often viewed as, I think you had sort of the old, state parks that were next to nothing to be able to stay at, and then that sort of evolved into private campground industry, which were still very cheap, very affordable vacation types, and it was in many ways viewed as just a very affordable form of traveling. But your number one income demographic is actually the 100,000 plus household income range right now. It's turning it into more of this, sparingly use the word luxury type experience, where people are going out, instead of maybe tent camping, they're choosing to go glamping, and then instead of going to a place that has partial hookups, now there's a high demand for full hookups, and they have bigger RVs and things along those lines. So I think that's a good sign, and I think that also comes with it the lack of supply of campgrounds that are properly equipped to be able to meet that level of demand. When you look at most campgrounds that have been built, they're built 40, 50 years ago, they have partial hookups, they might not have sewer hookups on each site, they may have minimal amenities, maybe a bare bones bathhouse that wouldn't be acceptable to most people these days. I just don't think that there's the same level of demand for that anymore. I think people have higher standards now. They want level sites, they want nice big sites that can fit the new size RVs, they want full hookups across the board, they want the dog parks, they want the dog washes, they want the bathhouse to be decked out and feel really, just like you would feel at home taking a shower. They want laundry rooms on site, they want, full service amenities, good, customer service there. Through and through. So I think you're just seeing this new level of demand, and there's not enough product out there that meets that mold yet, right? And that's what us as an acquisitions group, that's kind of what we're asking ourselves is, how do we take an older campground and transform that to meet modern day needs, right? We've spent a ton of money on just upgrading electrical alone, or installing water sewer hookups and paving the roads and doing the things that it takes to kind of bring it up to modern standards. My summary of it is that there are some headwinds as an industry as a whole, but there is still a large shortage of supply for what people truly want. We were at record high RV sales. There's roughly 10 million households in the entire country that have RVs currently. There's a continued increase in those that are looking to go camping. People still have 2 weeks of vacation time. They're still going to use it. If they already own a camper, they're going to go, they may go closer to home if gas prices go up a little bit, but it's still an extremely affordable way to go camping. So overall, we're very optimistic about the campground industry and where things are heading. And we think that being on the ahead of the curve in terms of having the right software tools, technology, and the right infrastructure throughout the campground itself, I think it's going to position us to really build a brand that's going to get customer recognition and have happy campers.
It sounds like campers are getting younger and increasingly demanding. I think something that we listened to as well when we were at the event was the fact that Wi-Fi, that maybe used to be something that seldom was in campgrounds, is now becoming almost a demand or a need at the campgrounds, correct?
Totally agree. And you're seeing this hybrid sort of digital nomad lifestyle, and for the first time ever, we have work from home being a possibility for a lot of people, and now Wi-Fi enables people to kind of have this whole partial leisure trip, but partial work trip, and they can have an integrated experience where they could be working from their camper for extended periods of time and pick up every few months. And I think that's going to lead to a longer average stay at a lot of historically short-term campgrounds.
As you witness these increases in costs due to higher demand from the modern day camper, have you been able as an operator to also witness new revenue generating opportunities within the campground space to kind of counter that higher cost that's being associated with these new amenities?
Yeah, so first we'll touch on just utilities. Again, we mentioned that those have went up substantially. One of my hypotheses as to why they've went up significantly is because the newer campers are just simply using more electric, and that's driving a spike. So even though you might have the same occupancy levels, you might have more people that have bigger campers, more AC units that are using a lot of the electric. Yeah. So when it comes to that, there was one of the big things that stood out actually in terms of technology is the fact that there's talks and there's currently technology built that's actually allowing individual sites to be metered for a one-night stay.
Oh, wow.
So if someone books a year at a time, it's historically super common for them to be able to pay their electric bill. Yeah. And they'll get meter readings usually on a monthly or a quarterly basis, and they'll get sent a bill for their usage of electric. Okay. But now with tech, we've been able to actually build meters that can give you real-time readings, and on a 24-hour notice, they could integrate with your back-end point-of-sale system to be able to bill someone for their exact usage of electricity.
That's great.
Now, if you think about it, it's not fair that someone that is out and about all day and they have an older camper and they're hardly turning the lights on, they're paying the same amount per night as the big rig next door that's hanging inside, using all the Wi-Fi, watching the TV all day, and using 4 times as much electricity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this sort of levels the playing field, and I think what it will enable is it will enable, instead of seeing rates just increasing across the board to absorb it, you'll start seeing more rates either decrease or stay stagnant, but then having more of a bill back based on usage. And I think that will become fairly commonplace. There was a lot of talks about EV and the impacts of EV on the campground world. Bottom line is that's probably still many years away, but campgrounds are beginning to prepare for that. Right. And when you talk about EVs, you talk about electricity being the new gasoline, and you would never walk around the campground giving away gasoline for free.
Right.
So why are we giving away electricity for free, and why is it just commonplace that no matter how much you use, you're paying the same rate? So I think if I had a prediction, it's that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see it become very commonplace for utilities, mainly electricity, maybe water, sewer. We're going to see those begin to be charged back for even your short-term stays, to make it more pay-as-you-go type thing.
Yeah, and more in line with the general hospitality industry. Staying on the topic of like a general economic outlook, I know that most of the campgrounds that have been purchased by the Requity Group have been within the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, where were cap rates then and where are they now as you continue to underwrite deals, looking for new opportunities within the space?
Yeah. So it's interesting when you look at cap rates, because the cap rates were actually at a pretty similar place 2 years ago as to where they are now. Okay. Because you're sort of fighting two conflicting forces. You're fighting an industry-wide cap rate compression that's taking place. In other words, industry-wide, there's more buyers moving into the market, there's more money moving into the market. I think a lot of that is because other forms of real estate have lower yields, less opportunity, and people are seeing that there's better cash flow, better opportunity in campgrounds. So they've been moving into the space and therefore driving pricing up slowly but surely. But then at the same time, you have the deflationary force, so to speak, of interest rates rising, which is going to therefore lower the valuations because your debt service or your cost of capital is higher. Yep. So you're sort of fighting this. You have one thing that's pushing pricing up and one that's pushing it down at the same time. Yep. And that, in our view, has really led to there being somewhat of a stagnancy of where cap rates have been in the last 2 years. Okay. Another observation has been, when interest rates are rising, they're often pushing up cap rates on the lower cap rate assets first. Yep. So the higher cap rate assets sort of stay off the radar. So when you have industry-wide cap rates at, say, 7 to 9%, and interest rates were 4%, there was such a huge spread on the cap rates to begin with. So even if interest rates have gone up to 6%. Maybe you're at 8 or 9%, but you still have a nice, healthy 200 to 300 basis point spread there. Now, as interest rates go higher, and we have seen them go higher than 6, that is starting to put pressure on pricing. And I think you're seeing, as a way around that, you're seeing a lot of sellers look at seller financing, so they'll actually hold the note on the property and give you a more attractive interest rate, so they can get maybe yesterday's pricing instead of having today's cash pricing with fresh debt at a higher rate.
Yeah, it makes sense. Moving on, Dylan, to the Expo side of the event.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there was approximately 140 suppliers that exhibited at this year's Expo. There were some highlights, including 7 different park model cabins, 2 fully sleepable wagons, EV vehicles, and an array of products to stock campground stores. What stood out the most to you during the exhibition? And did you have any vendors that you had already planned to attend prior to the event?
Yes, so we definitely had a number of vendors that we were excited to be able to meet with face-to-face at the event. We did explore some of the park models. We have a bunch of park models, probably 20 or so park models ordered right now, coming in the next 6 months to our campground. So it was good being able to see some of the park models that we had ordered, in addition to exploring some of the other product types out there. We also checked out a bunch of the different wagons. Those are becoming super popular, and other sort of glamping ideas out there. That's an area that we're definitely warming up to quite a bit, and we're seeing a lot of opportunity in, because the average daily rates on these glamping stays are pretty impressive. So we think that diversifying to have some glamping opportunities for the non-RVers is going to be really valuable over the years to come. And in addition to that, we saw a lot of tech platforms. I thought one that was really cool was they had almost like a I don't know what you call it, virtual reality integrated with real life type thing, like a Pokemon Go, if you're familiar, where you actually set up games where kids can run around with their iPad or their parents' phones and be able to collect things around the campground that look like virtual reality. So I think that was definitely neat. Really low cost amenity, low maintenance amenity too, to be able to have stuff like that to offer. Ton of other cool stuff going on with golf carts. There's gold mining, like the fake gold mining. Things for sale. There's wee bits, which are like water activities where you have like bouncy houses and things for kids to climb on the water. A lot of just really neat amenities. I think that's the key, right? A lot of times the best campgrounds are true family campgrounds. So you really have to be thinking about how are you positioning this to have something for the kids to do, especially if you're not in a big city where there's a ton of other stuff for them to go out and do during the day. You want to have stuff on site for people to do during the day.
And I think, as you mentioned before, some of these like electricity chargeback technology companies, did they also exhibit at the event, at the expo itself?
Yep, exactly. There was definitely the bill back companies that we're in touch with now to learn more about how they go about billing back for electric, water, sewer, and considering whether or not we do go live with that to be able to bill back for short-term stays to offer lower rates, but then bill as you go kind of thing. There's also a number of Wi-Fi vendors. I think that's one of the biggest challenges still, is cracking the code to good quality Wi-Fi. I think even major hotels still face this as well, because you have so many people that are trying to use the same Wi-Fi at once that it can be difficult. So we are in touch with a few groups that are helping us with exploring some different options for that. We're looking at, I know Starlink is pretty popular too, and we're still kind of exploring that. So trying to get a sense of, what works there. There's also EV charging stations becoming popular, both ways to upgrade traditional RV pedestals to be able to accommodate. I think we're going to dip our toes into that. We think it's going to be a while before that becomes super popular, but definitely being ahead of the curve, I think, can be nice to be able to help service that audience.
I know you mentioned the park models and the fact that you have some orders already in the pipeline. Is short-term rentals something that's becoming increasingly more popular in the RV campground space?
Yeah, we continue to hear from a lot of our guests across the board. There's demand for more and more park models or cabins or just some other type of stay. I think cabins are still the most popular, but there are many different ways that people can go glamping these days. So we are experimenting with different options and try to get a better pulse for like the ADRs possible at each of our campgrounds. But yeah, a good park model cabin is great because a lot of people, they want to camp, they want a vacation, and they have family that don't own RVs. So having some kind of an alternative for them to come and visit and get that same experience before actually owning an RV or without renting one, it's a great way to do it.
It is. Dylan, in conclusion, how would you rate your experience at RVC, and do you plan on attending again?
I'd say it was a phenomenal experience. Definitely one of the better industry-specific events that I've been to over the years. Got a lot of value out of it, and we will be back.
All right. Thank you guys for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for weekly videos and podcasts.
Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Requity Insights, hosted by our team at the Requity Group. You can find recordings of all shows along with our opt-in form to set up a call and view future investment offerings on our company website, therequitygroup.com, also listed in the show notes. A brief disclaimer to our listeners. Information presented herein is for discussion and illustrative purposes only and is not a recommendation or an offer or solicitation to buy or sell any securities. All investments are subject to risk, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. The views and opinions expressed by the Requity Group's speakers are their own as of the date of the recording. Any such views are subject to change at any time based upon market or other conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we really hope to see you next week.